Itachi Uchiha is one of the most iconic and powerful characters in all of Naruto. From the moment he was introduced, the clan killer was established as arguably the most menacing and mysterious character we had seen to that point in the story. Even with such an incredible story arc though, there's one period in Itachi's life that seems to be widely misunderstood by most Naruto fans: his days in the ANBU Black Ops. So, in this video, I'll take the task of showing you guys just how powerful Itachi of the Sharingan was while in the clandestine unit. In other words, today we'll be exploring, breaking down, and answering the question: how strong is ANBU Itachi? As I did in my ANBU Kakashi video, I'd like to first establish a floor for us to work from, meaning I think that if we are going to get an understanding of how strong Itachi was while he was in the ANBU, it's incredibly valuable to know just how strong he was before entering the prestigious tactical unit. So, just how strong was Itachi before entering the ANBU? Here's what we know. Itachi, even before awakening his Sharingan, was considered to be arguably the most gifted student in the history of Konoha's academy. This is ultra impressive, considering the fact that Kakashi, Minato, and the Sannin had all been through this academy before. So the fact that it's debatable is actually insane. One of the more impressive things that people point to is him smashing a boulder with his chakra-amped arm prior to entering the academy, to which his Jonin mother says, "You really are your father's son," and the novel says that she has saucer-like eyes. Now, this is cool, but a lot of people disingenuously use this to try and scale him above his Jonin mother, because they say that she couldn't do that, and that's why she didn't, but they leave out the fact that the only reason she didn't shatter the boulder is because she was turned away from it, checking on the well-being of her sons, while Itachi was looking over her shoulder where the boulder was coming from. So all we can really get from this is that it's super impressive for someone who hasn't entered the academy yet. And although there are a lot of other relatively interesting things that happen before he gets his Sharingan, Itachi really takes a leap forward once he has awakened it. A good way to determine just how strong he was, or at least a good floor for him to work from, is the indication that we get of him being above his Jonin supervisor. Not only is he able to resist a genjutsu that his Jonin supervisor wasn't able to, even prior to obtaining the Sharingan, he's also just outright implied to be more impressive than him. I do have to say, his Jonin team leader is considered by Danzo to be below average for a Jonin, so this doesn't necessarily catapult Itachi to some insane Kage tier or anything, but it does get him to low Jonin at least. For a 10-year-old, that's only rivaled by the likes of Kakashi, one of the other greatest prodigies of all time. But is that it, or are there some other showings indicating where he could scale? Honestly, no. You'd have to be incredibly generous to get him any higher than that pre-ANBU. You can take this statement about his fireball being above everyone else in the Uchiha aside from Fugaku and Shisui, and maybe imply that he's encroaching on that high-tier Jonin as he would be toward the top of the clan, and we do know that there are other Jonin in the clan, but it would certainly be a stretch to get him that high. This hard stop is supported by the fact that he and Shisui got absolutely throttled by Mukai Kohinata and ANBU Captain. So here's what I'll say. We can comfortably get pre-ANBU Itachi to that Jonin tier of combatant, low Jonin to mid Jonin probably, but not much higher than that. Danzo does state that the combination of Itachi and Shisui, prior to knowing about Shisui's Mangekyo, can't be challenged by anyone in the Uchiha clan, which implies that a 3-tomo 11-year-old Itachi and 3-tomo 15-ish-year-old Shisui are above Kage-level Fugaku, but Itachi is shown to be below Shisui pretty consistently, so I don't think that upscales him much at all. A lot of people will point to the fact that Itachi was able to spar Shisui and even get some W's in the process, but Shisui actually kind of dominated those sparring matches, going 24-11 against the young Uchiha prodigy, despite the fact that they were intentionally not using their Sharingan. Now, this is important for both of them, but I think this is more important for Shisui because he had already gained the moniker Shisui of the Body Flicker, and I believe that his Sharingan likely contributed to that insane proficiency with the high-speed technique. So that being said, going into the ANBU, Itachi is somewhere around that mid-Jonin level more likely than not, starting off pretty impressively. Upon entering the ANBU, Itachi was placed on Kakashi's Team Rho, going on numerous missions under the watch of the Copy Ninja. Still training every day, Itachi undoubtedly got stronger during his time in the ANBU, but just how much stronger did he get? Quickly, I'd like to just add that this section will be specifically concerning Itachi pre-Mangekyo, as he does get a massive power increase from that point on, so I'd like to address that in its own section. But to address the previous question, it is kind of unclear. That doesn't mean I didn't find anything, but, we honestly don't get a lot of information coming from his missions that actually helps with the scaling. The missions he goes on are generally pretty mundane, usually just like guarding the Hokage's office, which just entails him and Kakashi sitting outside of Hiruzen's door for the whole day, and the most action he actually gets during this time, in canon anyway, is just cutting down a child who was clearly inexperienced and weak. So it's not a lot to go off of, but what we do get are two statements that might be able to help us to paint a picture of how strong he might have actually been. The first statement comes in regards to Fugaku. Essentially, we get clarification multiple times that he's just jealous of his son's talent. Now, this could imply that he thinks Itachi has surpassed him already, but I think that's a bit of a stretch and kind of disingenuous to claim just based off of him being jealous of his talent. I mean, we could easily just say that all this means is that Itachi is far stronger than Fugaku was at that age, not necessarily that Itachi has already surpassed Fugaku at his current state. In addition to that, though, we do see Fugaku face down his son several times throughout the course of the Itachi Midnight novel, with Itachi seemingly respecting his father's power. Oh, and we can't forget that at this point, Itachi doesn't have the Mangekyo, while Fugaku does. So I think it's fair to say that Itachi is still certainly below his Mangekyo-wielding father here, but what about the other statement? This statement is actually really good. When talking to Itachi about the unrest that will result amongst their fellow clan members if he were to use Kodo on Fugaku to get him to change his mind about the coup, Shisui straight up says that Yashiro and the others, meaning the entire fighting force of the Uchiha clan outside of Fugaku, wouldn't stand a chance against Itachi. This is insane because Yashiro and a few others are confirmed to be Jonin, and the Uchiha clan is littered with powerful Sharingan-wielding shinobi. We know this because we see a wall of Sharingan in Obito's hideout with dozens of Sharingan on it. Now, these eyes are obviously the ones collected from the massacre, so all of these eyes likely belong to an Uchiha who would have been present at the meeting that Shisui is referring to. If you use the manga, since there's one eye per case, you get a little over 50 Uchiha from that, but if you take the anime, it's about 80. And keep in mind, this is just the Sharingan that we see, so at bare minimum, if you take the anime, there's at least 80 fighting Sharingan-wielding Uchiha, and if you take the manga, it's about 50. Now, sure, there are some Uchiha, like Izumi, who awaken their Sharingan before becoming a Genin, but I'd argue that's atypical, and as soon as she's promoted to Genin, she is required to go to the clan meetings. This means that every single Genin plus Uchiha was at these meetings, and Shisui thought that Itachi could take all of them down. So to say that Itachi could defeat potentially a dozen Jonin along with numerous Chunin and Genin members of the clan who likely all have Sharingan gets Itachi firmly in that high to peak Jonin tier and maybe up into the low Kage tier if you're generous. The reason why I say this is because we see peak Jonin like Kakashi and Guy in part 1, and even high Jonin characters like Asuma and Hiyashi take down multiple shinobi at once with ease. So that high to peak Jonin tier of power just far eclipses everything beneath it, meaning it shouldn't be too difficult for Itachi to take down dozens and dozens of low-ranking Uchiha if he's at that level. It is worth noting that this statement from Shisui does not include Fugaku, since he was planning on ambushing him and using the Kodo on him prior to this meeting. Nevertheless, being able to take down dozens of Sharingan-wielding shinobi automatically gets Itachi to bare minimum high Jonin, but likely closer to that peak Jonin level or even low Kage. But this is Itachi before acquiring the Mangekyo, so how strong is Itachi once he obtains it? That question will be answered in just a second, but if you are enjoying the video so far or maybe you have learned something new, make sure to like and subscribe. subscribe. Unless you drink the water out of the hot dog pot when you're done cooking. If you do that, do not like or subscribe. Go get some psychiatric help immediately. And also, if you don't usually stick around to the very end, I encourage you to do that because I have an exciting preview for next week. Now that we've established a solid floor for us to work from, let's get into just how strong Itachi was once he gets the Mangekyo, or I'm gonna go from the night of the Uchiha massacre. Adding the Mangekyo to a peak Jonin or low Kage level combatant is a recipe for a freakishly strong shinobi, so just how strong is he? Well, I think it's safe to assume that the MS catapulted Itachi to a new tier as soon as he awakened it, but contrary to popular belief, the massacre doesn't occur soon after he awakened the MS. It occurs over a year after. We know this because it's revealed in a conversation between Itachi and one of his ANBU subordinates that Shisui's death basically bought them a year of time since it threw the Uchiha clan's original plans out the window and they had to come up with something new. So Itachi, being someone who constantly trains and is obsessed with becoming the strongest shinobi in the world, obviously he got massively stronger than he was before. First of all, we know that Itachi joins the Akatsuki right after the massacre, and it's shortly after that that he's introduced to Orochimaru, and then fodderizes him with base Sharingan Genjutsu. So that alone automatically gets him in that above the Sannin tier, who are stated to be collectively above the 5 Kage, and individually relative to the likes of Old Man Hiruzen, who's stated to be the strongest of the 5 Kage. So this means that Itachi is in a tier that is above the strongest of the Kage. But although Itachi did awake the MS, we do know that it took Sasuke a while for his abilities to really develop, and his progress was massively sped up via hatred amps. So what abilities does he actually have? How potent are they? Do they really advance him that far? I know a whole year has passed, but what do we know for sure? Well, for those of you who haven't read the novels, which I strongly encourage you to do, Itachi not only shows off the Tsukiyomi twice, he also cast the Amaterasu on Suguru Aburame, and in his battle against Sasuke, he actually stated that the Susanoo took root in his eyes the moment he awoke the MS. So again, as somebody who is obsessed with becoming the strongest person in the world, and somebody who trains every single day, after a year, I'd say he likely has pretty solid control over all 3 of those abilities. And I'd argue that he'd have to have at least the ribcage or skeletal Susanoo. Maybe you could argue his Susanoo has fully evolved into its armored form, but I will say I think that probably is only achieved after the massacre is finished, since the emotional amp he receives from executing his entire clan would have vastly increased his Sharingan's power. So even though he doesn't use it, I think it's fairly safe to say that he likely has access to at least the lower forms of the Susanoo, if not the full armored. Some things that I doubt he has are the Yatamir and the Totsuka blade, or at least it's super questionable. Orochimaru seems to imply that these are items that can be collected or found, so it's unfair to assume that he just had these stock with his skeletal Susanoo or something. Even if he doesn't though, he's far surpassing everyone in the clan at the time, save Obito. Being above the Sannin puts him above basically everyone on the planet. A good demonstration of the gap between Itachi and the entire Uchiha clan is the fact that by the time he arrives to strike down his father and mother, he doesn't even have a single scuff mark on him. We see that the massacre of his fellow clan members isn't really a physical challenge for him in the Midnight novel, as not even those who resisted were able to do anything with him. So he's just so far beyond the entire clan that it's not even funny, unless you want to make an argument that Mangekyo Sharingan wielding Fugaku could have put up a fight against him, but it's unclear what his MS abilities are, so it'd be tough to make that claim with any level of certainty. But still, mowing down half the clan, Obito did mow down the other half, but and facing 0 obstacles while doing it outside of his own emotional turmoil is incredibly impressive. Now, there is one other statement that I think we should address before concluding on the video, and that's the one that we get from Kakashi in part 1. While Itachi was just embarrassing Konoha's top Jonin, including my boy Kakashi, he says something super interesting. He says that Itachi hasn't begun to show them his true power, that he's even better than what he's showing at that point in time. So you can take two different interpretations from this, and I'll let you guys decide. The first interpretation you could take is that he's referring to the power he saw from Itachi when Itachi was beneath him on his Team Row squad. Now that would be crazy because this would be an 11-year-old Itachi prior to getting promoted to ANBU captain with no Mangekyo Sharingan. What this would imply is that 11-year-old pre-Mangekyo Itachi could duplicate or even exceed what he was doing against those Jonin at that point in time. If that's the case, throw out my previous scaling. That version of Itachi is clearly in the Kage tier of combatant with no questions. But I do think it's more likely that it's not that and rather a different explanation. You see, the ANBU were spying on the Uchiha clan 24/7, not just watching them from afar. They had cameras throughout the entire compound watching their every move, every second of every day. And which team was assigned to do this? Team Row, Kakashi's team. We know this for a fact because when Itachi joined the ANBU, he was assigned to Team Row, and his mission was to watch his family. So it tracks that Kakashi and or his team would have been watching at the point that this happened. Even if you assume that they were called off duty, that for some reason they weren't watching the Uchiha clan at that point in time, or maybe Danzo just put his Foundation spies in there, what he would have received is a debriefing including video footage of at least some clips of Itachi doing this, which means he likely would have seen the Amaterasu, and he definitely would have seen him just absolutely flying through half of the clan with absolutely no difficulty. So I think it's more likely that that's what it's in reference to, because we don't actually get anything prior to that that really should make Kakashi think what he is saying. Something else that supports the idea that this is Massacre Itachi and not early ANBU Itachi is the fact that the cover of this chapter, chapter 142, is a picture of Itachi from the Uchiha Massacre. So since we don't see any other references to ANBU Itachi in this chapter aside from the statement that we get from Kakashi, and the only time we see ANBU Itachi in this chapter is on the cover, and that's directly referencing Uchiha Massacre Itachi, I think it's a pretty good indicator that this is in reference to that version of him that has the Mangekyo, as opposed to his early ANBU counterpart. Well, that is it for this video, but I told you guys that I have a preview for next week, and I'm really excited for this video that's coming up. Since I've scaled ANBU Kakashi and now ANBU Itachi, I can now bring you guys a video that has never been made before. ANBU Kakashi and ANBU Itachi versus the Akatsuki. The premise for the video is going to be Hiruzen sends out his two top ANBU members to take on the duos of the Akatsuki as they would have existed at the time Kakashi and Itachi would have been in the ANBU together. So, I'm super excited for it. I hope you guys are super excited for it. And if you are, or if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And then if you're excited for next week, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out when it drops. But for those of you guys who made it this far, I just want to thank you for watching all the way to the end and say until next time, have an awesome day.